What does it take to grow beauty and colors more vibrant? More water, the right sun, nutrients. It takes all of that and more. Like family. At Knoyer Garden Center and Glass House Market, family is present in everything we do. Generation after generation. From our family to our employees who make you feel right at home. That's the difference you'll find when you shop Knoyer Garden Center.
We recommend listening to the CW Pod with a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon. Grown, distilled, well-rested, and bottled in Erling, Iowa. Now from the Channel Seed Studios, this is the CW Pod, fueled by Steeple Ridge.
Hello, welcome to this week's CW Pod here on Iowa Everywhere. We are presented, as always, by our friends at Steeple Ridge Bourbon over there in Erling, Iowa. Shout out to my guy, Pat Hoffman, and his family for creating some of the best bourbon in the world, and it's my preferred drink. I absolutely love this stuff. The green label right now is the Mash Rye. That's what I just can't get enough of. Looking forward to today's podcast here in the Channel Seed Studios. This is one that we've had a lot of requests for and finally got him locked down. And it was a really good interview. Like I learned a lot about Brad Heinrichs, the director of the Swarm Collective at the University of Iowa. Not with the University of Iowa, you know what I mean. Brad was awesome. I was a little nervous because I'm the Iowa State guy and I'd never met him. You just never know how that's going to go. Most people, I think, around the state respect me and know me enough to know that I'm not going to come at you with a fire shooter or whatever. It was a good conversation, a constructive conversation. We learned a lot about how the Swarm is structured, where that money goes, why he made some of the comments that he made in the media in the past couple of weeks, and got a good perspective. You know, I look at all this stuff from Iowa State because that's just my day-to-day life, but I'm very curious about the business of this and some of the challenges that Iowa has that Iowa State doesn't necessarily have in this collective space with NIL. This is a really good interview. I'm really proud of how this went down, and I really thank Brad for, as open as he was, and I think that this was good stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I know I certainly did. This is my interview here on the CW Pod. We are presented by Steeple Ridge Bourbon in the Channel Seed Studios with the director of the Swarm, Brad Heinrichs. All right, here we go. Really excited about this one. Brad Heinrichs is the director of the Swarm Collective, and it's great to get you on, sir. Again, I was kind of telling you off camera, you look like you got a heck of a lot better backdrop than I do. Where are you coming at us from today, man?
I live in South Florida.
You made a good decision there.
Well, the next few months are going to be kind of rough here. I'd rather be up in Iowa, I think, for the summers. But down here when it's cold up there isn't bad. That's for sure.
So give us the backdrop real quick. I know you played golf at Iowa. I'm familiar enough with. Are you an Iowa guy? Like, how did you give us a little bit of your background leading up to now?
Sure. So I was recruited to play golf at Iowa. I grew up in the Kansas City area in Missouri.
Okay.
And so never been to Iowa until I went to school there. And really fell in love with the place when I was there. That were actually not necessarily the place itself, but rather the people that I was surrounded with, and been a longtime supporter of Iowa athletics. And then sort of by happenstance, I just somehow got left holding the keys to run an NIL collective for the last couple of years, which I never ever dreamed I would be doing. And so I've been doing this for the last couple of years, in addition to my real job, which actually pays me money as an actuary. I run an actuarial consulting firm. So there's a bit of my background for you, Chris.
Well, yeah. So that's where I wanted to start, like these collectives, and how in the heck did you get yourself into the, because it really is a thankless job. I told you
it is.
I told you going into this that Brent Bloom was a guy I went to college with, and I've known him forever, and he runs the Iowa State one, and I get to kind of see it up close, just like that. Nobody's ever really happy with you. Everybody always wants to complain, and then you guys are the ones who are,
but not donate. But not donate.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
want to. They want to complain, but they don't want to complain with their wallet.
How did you, especially so you're down in Florida, it's not like you got your nose and everything in Iowa City all the time. How did you end up here?
Well, so what I do have in Florida are really good golf courses,
Oh,
and what you have is you have the Hawkeye football program having bowl games in Florida almost every year. Granted, the last couple years have been different, but
yep.
in the 2021 area, well, I guess there was COVID there once, but you know what I mean. Like in
Yeah, absolutely.
we've been to the Outback Bowl or whatever they call that, more than once, or the Citrus Bowl or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is the coaching staff or members of the staff want to play golf afterwards, and so I'm the guy they call up to take take them golfing. And so what's really happened was I asked one of my favorite questions, which is what keeps you up at night, to those guys, and you get different answers. But the first time I got the answer was this NIL thing is going to change the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And this was at the very onset of it. And, and I asked, are we doing anything? Oh, we got some people working on it. I said, okay, cool. And then the year goes along. We have another Florida Bowl. They come down, same group comes down, and it's really, more like one guy that was really into this, the head of recruiting, Tyler Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm asking him also, how's the NIL stuff going? And he's like, well, we're in the same spot we were last year, still in the incubation process. And since I've run a business and kind of, bought and sold businesses and, built businesses, I was like, well, why don't I, lend a hand to just help these guys get going? And so he hooked me up with the guys that were trying to put this together. And I offered to help. And I said, how about, give me the keys for 30 days or 60 days and I'll get this thing all set up for you. And then you guys can run with it. And they said, perfect. So I did. Came back and brought the keys back, and they said, we don't want it. It's all yours. And so that, I was left with the keys, I guess. And so I've been trying to drive ever since.
Well, good on you, because again, it's a thankless job. And what fascinates me the most about the space that you're working in with Swarm and all these collectives, it just seems like it's, one, it changes all the time, and two, we don't really know where anything's going to be at in like a year. So you're kind of, you're like the gatekeeper in a way until we get to the end of this transition and whatever that might look like. That's
right.
That seems like it would be very challenging in your shoes.
It is. And I'll add to what you just said, in that the NCAA, put together some really, really difficult rules to follow. I tend to be a rule follower, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you tell somebody, like, Chris, if I try to hire you to come work for my actuarial firm, and I give you all the sales pitch about how great it is and how much PTO you're going to have, and this is going to be a great place to work, awesome culture, blah blah blah, and then you say, and I say, the job is yours if you want it. And you say, well, Brad, how much are you going to pay me? And then I have to say, well, wait a minute, Chris, I can't tell you how much I'm going to pay you until you actually get here.
Yeah.
But on the first day on campus, on your first day at campus, we'll talk about that. Those are the NCAA rules that we were left with. And I'm kind of going, how is this, and then I see all the other collectives, nobody's abiding by these rules. And so now I'm stressed because I'm I don't want to be the guy that breaks the NCAA rules or does anything wrong, And so you're trying to come up with creative ways of getting around the rules. Like, well, I can't talk about your specific situation, but somebody with your skill set might make something like this last year, and now, fortunately, there's been some lawsuits that have kind of made some of those rules at least temporarily go away, or put them on pause. But as you can imagine, I mean, what a crazy set of circumstances the NCAA has created on their own doing. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and on top of it, I think Iowa's in a really interesting spot because you guys have the blessing of being in the Big Ten. So, like from an Iowa State standpoint, like it's a different conversation. It's like, how do we survive? How do we get to this next era? So Iowa's in good shape, right? Solid footing, Big Ten. But then I was reading your deal with Pat
You say
Hardy.
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's the curse side of this where what did you say? Ohio State spent more on a quarterback than you guys are your entire roster. So then that comes the real issue.
Yeah, they're spending more on their quarterback room than we're spending on our entire roster. Yeah, I mean, we relative to some of the other places in the country, yeah, we look pretty strong. Relative to looking at Ohio State and how much money they're spending, I feel like a pauper,
Yeah.
and so, and our fans, wouldn't you believe, they want us to beat Ohio State. They're not ready to just lie down and take a beating. They want to compete against the big boys, and so and want to be they want us to be a big boy, so to speak. And so, unfortunately or unfortunately, in today's college athletics, it takes money. It takes more money than it used to. Now, the crazy part about it, of course, is that football, for example, is making more money than it ever used to with revenue sharing. Unfortunately, though, the players don't get a dime of that, or at least they don't as of now. And so there's more money coming in for football, but none of it can be shared with us and the players. And what I've learned is that when in recruiting, it used to be that you parade the kid around the locker room and show them how great the locker room is, and you show them how amazing the stadium is, and you make this nicest locker room. The college football has better locker rooms than the NFL.
It's crazy.
And but now the kid doesn't care what the locker room looks like. It's how much am I going to get paid here relative to, and you know what? People like to give kids a hard time for that. Are they any different than the rest of us, though?
No.
I mean, if I take you into my actuarial firm and show you, hey, now look at this office, look at the nice desk and chair, and you're going to get 2 bookcases, and look how wonderful this is. You're going to say, Brad, I don't give a shit. How much are you going to pay me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the end of that's just the real deal.
What's my 401k going to look like when I'm 60?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the other issue, and this one, like, to me, it's crazy to me. I've been in college athletics long enough where it's not crazy to me because I saw it coming. But when you guys also have to work with these athletic departments that have their own challenges because they've budgeted, they got to pay all these coaches, they got to pay for the scholarships, and this money, they have their own interests. But then you have these collectives that are trying to help them because their donations drop off and their tickets drop off if the team sucks. But then we've also seen, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I've read all of your quotes. I mean, there's oftentimes some headbutting that goes on between the collectives and athletic departments, and I think it's completely natural. But how have you navigated that challenge? Like, are you more of a guy that tries to blend in, or are you kind of a shark when you get in the room? How have you approached that challenge?
Well, I'll tell you that if you read the Pat Hardy article, I would look like I'm kind of an ass, and that didn't really come off very well. And I read it, and it's not the way I intended to come off. The last thing I ever want to do is chastise Iowa fans.
Which is why we asked you to come on, because I thought the same thing. I don't know if you watched our show, but I was like,
I did not.
I said, this guy's in a hard spot. Okay. Like go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're right. You're right. And I, the interesting thing about running these collectives is you promise a kid a certain amount of money. Okay. And I don't like to make promises that I can't keep. You promise a kid that he's going to make a certain amount of money, and then I've got to go raise that money. I got to make sure I have that money. and my name is on the collective. And I'll tell you that we sign real contracts. We don't just promise, hey, come here and you'll get X, and not have it in writing. I mean, we put it in writing, and it's up to me to make good on that promise. And if it means that I have to write a personal check, it means I have to write a personal check. And so that becomes difficult, right? Um, it becomes a very difficult. It is a difficult spot to be in, and I'll tell you that Iowa administration has been, for the last, since Beth took over, has been terrific. I don't have a bad thing to say about them at all, really. I think they've been great. Their hands are tied. They can't just say, "Oh, Brad, how much do you need?"
Yeah.
and then write a check it's against the rules to do that. They can cheer for me hard. They can help me fundraise. In fact, I know they're going to. But there's only so much that they can do. But it's an interesting world where usually when in my real world, my real job, I buy something when I have the money to pay for it.
Yeah.
In this world, I buy something and then I better go find the money to pay for it. Because that's just the way the nature of this game. And so the other thing I will say that's naturally difficult is that we are all the athletics, the people that are raising money for athletics are calling the same phone numbers that I'm calling.
No doubt.
We're we're competing for the same wallet, and it's hard to even say competing because it doesn't. I view myself as a hawk. You're a cyclone, but you don't really feel like, you don't want to feel like there's us against the athletics, because I want the athletics to be successful. Um, but now the way the rules are in this transition period, as you originally mentioned, we are asking the same people, the same donors that were used to helping to build out nice locker rooms, to instead compensate players. And again, it's the new world.
You said that you thought the Hardy piece didn't come out the way you necessarily hoped it would, as far as your quotes go.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that? Because we were having that conversation about like how much more can fans do, but
Yeah.
and I liked it. I thought you were just being blunt. I thought you were just telling the truth and what you thought. What didn't come off well?
There was nothing about what I said that wasn't true. I didn't
Yeah.
lie, or there
Yeah.
wasn't anything like that. It was just that, when I read it, just the way that it came off, was not the way I intended. We've all probably said things that you intended it one way and it reads a completely different way. But the last thing I wanted to do is to chastise or antagonize the Iowa fan base and shame them for not donating to the Swarm. I mean, I understand that everybody's got a budget, and to some that budget's pretty tight, and they may have money for season tickets, but nothing more. They may not be able to afford that. But I guess what I want to make sure, and the reason that I go on podcasts or do these interviews, is I just want everybody to understand how important the NIL is to creating a roster and keeping a roster of solid players so that we have a chance to compete for, to win on Saturday or on the hardwood whenever we play. It's more important than anything right now for most players, not actually most, for many players. NIL is one of the top considerations for when they transfer to a school or whether they go to a school, more so than it maybe used to be. And so the more people that can understand that, then I'm hopeful that those that have the resources to be able to donate to something like this or contribute to something like this, that those people will come forward. I need to make sure that everybody at least knows about this and understands how important it is, because I feel like I'm part of Iowa football and Iowa basketball and Iowa women's basketball. I understand what the conversations are like when people are being recruited, and what the questions they ask are, and what they're looking for. And so I'm trying to educate the masses just how important this is. And I may have come across as being antagonistic towards the fan base, but rather what I really wanted to do is educate and help them understand just the magnitude of the situation.
Well, I thought the quote about the Ohio State quarterback room was very effective, and that blew me
It's
away.
true.
Well, and you're right though, Brad, because I mean I'm closer to Iowa State. I understand Iowa State's situation more, and like we look at you guys and we're like, oh, they got more money than God over there in Iowa City, but then you like it's always
It's
relative.
always relative.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys
Yeah.
are trying to compete with Penn State and these giant population centers that have
Right.
more people, that 100,000 seat stadiums, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
it's
right.
a. So do you think that it'll actually be good for Iowa though? Like let's say let's open up our crystal ball 5 years from now. Oh, let me ask you. We'll start here. Do you think the Swarm will exist in 5 years, or is this something that? Because I've heard arguments from really smart people that think these collectives will just be gone and they're all in house and that's it. But I've also heard from other people who think that there is a purpose for these in 5 years. What do you think?
It's a great question. My crystal ball would say, and again, I am that my prediction is sort of what I think the solution needs to be. Um, I think the NCAA has proven to us all that they can't be trusted to make like the right decision on things. So, or maybe it won't even be the NCAA that makes this decision. But the way I view this, Chris, is the following: NIL was created for people like Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
NIL was created for somebody who is an absolute star that State Farm wants to hire, and Bose and Nationwide, or what is it, Farmers Insurance, and whoever else she's doing all these commercials for. That they want to hire her because she's got a brand. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, from as Iowa fans, imagine if we didn't have NIL. She would find out that she has millions of dollars of potential, revenue for herself that she would have to give up just by playing basketball in college. She may have just left and went to the WNBA just so she could collect on all that revenue, and never even graced the hardwood at Iowa for the last couple of years if she didn't have NIL.
Mm-hmm.
But it was created for her. It wasn't created so that I could go, or me and Brent go to our respective fan bases and pass the hat and say, hey, we've got to be able to pay to keep a decent roster. So I need money from every single person in this room, every person in the stadium, in order to pay our players to be able to play here. That wasn't necessarily what I think was originally intended. What I think will eventually happen, if cooler heads prevail, is that the NIL structure will go in-house, meaning that there will be revenue sharing for the players.
Mm-hmm.
Every program, say the football team, will get this much money that they can share with the players. And in exchange for sharing that revenue, the players will sign a contract that says that they won't receive any money from a collective or anybody whose principal business isn't paying college athletes. I'm not sure if I said that exactly right, but essentially saying that the whole, hey, I'm going to go collect money from the masses so I can pay my football team to go deliver Meals on Wheels. That stuff won't exist. Now, could the Swarm still exist? Yes, the Swarm could exist to go out and find the State Farms of the world, or whatever businesses possible that want to have the quarterback do some commercials or something like that. We could exist to try to help create business opportunities for these student athletes. Because think about it, NFL, Tom Brady's done a few commercials. Peyton Manning is still doing commercials.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But that's where it would kind of move towards, is something of that nature, but not the, collect money from the masses to fund the roster collective type thing. And that's where the revenue from the TV would replace that. That's where I sort of view where we should be heading. Whether we do or not, Chris, is beyond me. What do you think?
Well, yeah, and I guess off the top of my head, if that's where it is going, I feel like it would be a better scenario for Iowa long term than now, because you are going to be in this Big Ten that's going to be cashing huge television checks,
Yep.
and then it keeps it. I mean, it's almost like a salary cap, right? I mean, it's at least it'll be intent. It's college athletics. People are always going to be cheating. We know
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but it instead of Iowa fans, and there's only so many of us in this state, right? We're in a small state with two major universities. It's hard.
Exactly.
This isn't Nebraska, right? Like you're splitting it up. I guess if it truly goes in that direct, like to me, I'm really enthusiastic if I'm an Iowa fan, because you're sitting there in a scenario where it's really keeping the Ohio States and Michigans and Penn States from being able to make this all about population and all about money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. And then, and you were talking about football. The other one is basketball. I mean, look at basketball. And we care about basketball in Iowa just like you guys do at Iowa State. You guys have a heck of a basketball program. But like for us, we're trying to support football and basketball and women's basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and then we're trying to compete in the portal for players that might be also looking at Creighton, Xavier,
That's hard.
DePaul, Georgetown, Gonzaga,
Mhm.
St. John's, Providence. What do these guys all have in common?
No football.
Exactly. They
Yep.
only have 10 players to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So how much are they going to pay their 10 players versus us? You want to talk about a competitive disadvantage. And so that I think is a real struggle for the Iowas of the world from a basketball perspective.
There's been a lot of conversation about that with your organization specifically, and I don't know how much information you're willing to give, but how do you determine that split? Is there, as far as how much money goes to football, in women's basketball is huge, right? And we see that at Iowa State, like it's a huge deal in our state. How do you decide, okay, if we have $100,000, this program gets this percentage or whatever?
So when we originally started this, and again, it was just me at the very onset.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that look at this from the standpoint of I've got to keep the books here. So if
Yeah.
Chris writes me a check, I've got to go into QuickBooks and record when you wrote the check, who it is, what you're at, all your information, however much it was, and of course what bucket it's going to go into. At first there were 3 buckets, right? And so my original thought was, well, you just pick whichever one you want. But the last thing I wanted was Chris Williams to write me a check for $5 and say, well, I want $3.50 to go to football, and I want $1 to women's basketball and 50 cents for men's basketball. And now I'm 3 different entries,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just thinking, this is a mess. Like this is going to be ugh.
Yeah.
And so what I decided was that there are let's just do a simple math that there are like 15 men's basketball players, 15 women's basketball players, and whatever it is, 130 or so football players, right? And so what I did was I said, well, we're gonna basically say every player counts the same. And so what it really worked out to be was about 80% football, 10% men's basketball, 10% women's basketball, assuming that they're all, counted, and so what I did was, unless you contribute $1,000 or more, so for the people that are writing pretty big checks, I'm going to be, full concierge, whatever you want.
Absolutely.
You're going to write $1,000 check or more. But if you're giving me, $15-$20, not to say that it doesn't count, because it does, it matters. But there's going to be a lot of people giving me $20. I just don't want to have every single permutation of how to split out that $20 amongst 3 different sports. So I just basically say, hey, if you're giving me $20 a month, which is awesome, it's going to go 80% football, 10% men's basketball, 10% women's basketball. You want to write a bigger check? Hey, whatever. I'll split it
Yeah.
however you want. And so, that's drawn a lot of criticism. And it may be something that we're able to change. But when I was first trying to get my feet on the ground, I needed to be able to be as efficient as possible, especially since I have another job too. But
Understood.
trying to navigate that, you don't want this to be an administrative nightmare. And so that was the decision we originally made.
And I always say too, even at Iowa State, where they've had this high-end basketball success, if you don't have successful football, everything suffers.
It does.
Because it's
It
such
does.
it's just the funding of what it does for it subsidizes everything.
Yeah. I catch a lot of grief from some people that basically say, "Oh, he only cares about football." That's not true. And they say, "Well, the swarm is the football term." And I said, "Well, that was the name that the group that was putting this together came up with. I just went with it, I want all sports to be successful. So, anyway, yeah, it's not, there's no real easy answer. I'm hopeful that in the near future we'll be able to accommodate anybody's wish. You want to give $20 to women's basketball? Fine. I think we can probably we're almost there, but I needed to get my feet on the ground and
But
basically.
You're no different than an athletic department, though. I mean, if you are a member of the I Club and you donate
Yeah.
$20, they spend it how they want. But if you're
That's right.
if you want your name on a building and you're gonna give $1 million, they're gonna let you put it where you want it. Like, this is
Exactly.
pretty
Yeah,
normal.
and yeah, right. And if you think about it, if I wrote a check for $100 to the I Club or athletic department, it's going to go into the general athletic fund, and it's likely going to be split most predominantly football because they have the biggest budget. I mean, they're drawing the biggest amount of money, so some of that 100 may go to other sports, but football is the biggest program.
I've had this theory for a couple of years now. This is what I would like to see happen, and I would like to bounce it off you to see what you think. So
Sure.
and you come from an Olympic sport background where you played golf at the University of Iowa. I would love to see, and hear me out, this sounds kind of radical, but I'd like to see the number of football scholarships cut going into this new era. Because right now we're at 85. And we keep hearing about how all these, even in the Big Ten, even in the Big Ten and SEC, where if we got to pay all these players, like the entire financial structure is blown up, right? And there's going to be cuts, and we can't afford to do all the things that we've done in the past. Do we really need in a free agency era, and hopefully that gets, hopefully that settles in a little bit. Do we really need, if we're because it used to be on National Signing Day, you could map out your scholarships for the next 5 years and be like, man, we may be rough next year, but in 2 years when all these guys are juniors, right? And you could map that out as a fan and as a coaching staff, and is what we do here in the media. You can't do that anymore. It doesn't matter. Like I told our staff at Cyclone Fanatic, we don't even need to worry about scholarship charts anymore because it's just going to be blown up in 6 months. Do we really need 85 scholarships in this era? And I'm saying let's cut it down to 70, and maybe that saves the men's golf team. Maybe that saves a rowing team. Maybe because I want opportunities for young people, and I think college sports are a great thing. What do you think about that going forward? Because again, I think it'll help the lower levels too, right? Like,
well, there's no doubt that there are men's sports that have been cut. Olympic sports have been cut on the men's side because of Title IX, where you got to have the same number of female student athletes as males. And so when you've got 85 football players, there's no female sport or women's sport out there that has 85 scholarships or even close, right? And so, it's funny that you mentioned reducing the number of scholarships. What I'm seeing is kind of the opposite, which
Ugh.
is that NIL programs are paying for scholarship athletes because the effective scholarships number that you see out there is higher than 85. I mean, I think that a lot of the SEC schools have probably been doing this for decades, but or many years, where you get there's 85 scholarships, but they may be 95, and whether it's NIL or somebody else
Yeah.
pays for the full freight for the other 10. They're in quote unquote walk-ons, but
Mhm.
they're really they're scholarship caliber players. And so I think you would see, if you ask the football programs, I think the football programs would say we need more scholarships,
It's insane.
not fewer scholarships. So that's why I'm kind of chuckling at your
Again, though, like,
your idea, because the football coaches are saying we need more, we don't need less.
but in my comeback, Brad, would be, well, listen, we're all talking about professionalize. This is all like, it's professionalizing all of this.
Yeah.
The NFL doesn't have 85 scholarships, and they play more games than you guys do. Like
That is
I-
true. That is
I'm-
true.
I know it's a radical idea, and I know I'm going to get pushback here. But
Yeah, the other thing I would say about the NFL is they kind of know those. They know those players. Those players are,
that's
the
true.
58 or whatever. I mean, they know exactly what they're getting from each player that they put on their roster. Whereas we're recruiting a kid out of high school who still is popping pimples in the mirror, and you know what I mean.
It's also another reason why it's crazy to like bet too much money on these college games, because you have no idea what these guys were doing on Wednesday night.
Yeah,
Like,
there could be a fight with a girlfriend. You never know what's going on. These kids are kids, and I've got 2 kids. One's about to go to college this fall, and I'm sitting there thinking, I do think about that. It's like, my gosh, my kid is the same age as these kids now that are being recruited to play for football. So
I also think too, and I'm sure you have seen this up close, that the way that the system is set up right now, I don't necessarily know if it's good for the brains of many young people, because have you seen it, like, where a young person's very happy at the University of Iowa? This is a great place for them to grow to be a man or a professional woman. They have a good culture around them, but then all of a sudden they're offered what seems to be an exorbitant amount of money now, but over the course of your 80-year life, it's really not that much, where they give up a great experience where they're maturing and they're growing, maybe for the wrong reasons. Because to me, like, I just think back to when I was 19, and God, I would have made a bunch. I was an idiot. I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing. And I just don't think that the way that it's set up now, like this year-to-year free agency thing, because I know, like, I've heard the numbers, and I'm sure you know way more than me, like, that some of these just, like, average players at that level are pulling on this free agent. And there's a lot of them that are going to go to these places and they're not going to be happy.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. I can also tell you that I'll tell you an even better example of what you're talking about is, say, women's basketball. There are, Caitlin Clark was the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA draft. I can tell you for certain that there are double digits of the number of women that make more money playing for their college teams. It's in the double digits of players that make more than she's going to make playing for the Indiana Fever.
Mm.
Think about that.
Yeah,
They're making more money in college,
and
some of it's significantly more money in college than she's going to make as the number 1 overall player in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
well,
now, on the men's side, I think they get like $10 million or something, so it's a little different.
But
on the women's side, it is a huge. You can't. It's almost hard to blame a female. Like when you're talking about how they're going from a good situation, chasing the money, and it ruins them.
I'm talking about the 3rd string wide receiver that has a bunch of friends and a girlfriend, and he packs up and leaves to make $50,000 more. you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those mistakes happen. They're gonna continue to happen. But you see that in the real world too.
You're
I see
right.
people all the
You're
time.
right.
They'll,
Yeah.
they'll go and they'll get a $10,000, $15,000 raise to go somewhere else when they had a pretty good spot, but they were chasing the money, and now they're
Yeah.
in a miserable spot. I mean, it
Mhm.
happens. You're saying that you were an idiot when you were 19. I was an idiot when I was 29.
Yeah,
I
I'm an
mean,
idiot now at 39, so
I could be that way. So
the
anyway.
women's thing's fascinating to me, and I don't think that's going anywhere. Like, I think that they these young women are so good on social media. They actually, and it isn't that the goal of all this, like, they're actually capitalizing off of their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah.
That's what
That's
it's
that's
for.
it. That's it. And that's what it's for. It's not, and I'm arguing against myself here because I'm the one that's asking for people for money.
Oh, you
But
I
it was not originally intended for the Brad Heinrichses of the world to pay them. It's more, businesses and corporations that realize that this student athlete, their name, image, or likeness has monetary value, and we're willing to tap into that in order to make our corporation more money.
Mhm.
Uh, so, but again, back to the real world, though. I mean, this is where we are, and if Hawkeye fans want to win, like I do, then we're going to have a strong NIL program. There's just no two ways about it.
How do
Same
you
with our state.
you said that the number, and I'm going off of your deal with Hardy, and then I also read
Yep.
Chad's column in the Register. You felt like the number is less than what your initial goal was as far as swarm members go. Do
Yeah.
you think? I mean, do you think that you're making progress there, or is there like a roadblock that you guys have hit your collective? Because I would guess that if you're experiencing it, then others are around the country as well. I don't know if this is
I
just an
would
Iowa
imagine.
thing.
I would imagine, and what I'm seeing is that there are other states that are issuing legislation that are allowing um, contributions to the collective to account for priority points in the football stadium.
Oh,
Um,
mm,
if we were able to get something like that passed in Iowa, and I'm sure Brent would be raising his hands and walking arm in arm with me on something like that, then that would really, really help. Because again, for a lot of Iowans, they have a budget. I mean, there's only so much entertainment dollar availability there, and to pay for priority point seating, to pay the seat license or whatever they call it, the donation plus the tickets plus all the money that you spend when you go, and then contribute to the NIL on top of that. Oof, that's tough. It would be nice if they had the option to either give to the facilities athletic department or the NIL, and it all counts towards the priority where they sit in the stadium. That would be very, very helpful. But yeah, as far as roadblocks go, I think there's just a general aversion for some people to it. We're trying to make it as Iowa friendly as possible by asking these kids to do work for charity. I think Brent's probably doing the same thing. Um, trying to get some good out of this.
mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just know that when we go to the bowl games, I don't know if you've been to an Iowa bowl game before, but you go to an Iowa bowl game, and a lot of times you see 30, 40,000 people, at the Iowa fans at this bowl game.
Mhm.
And so my thought was originally, well, if there's 30, 40,000 people that are going to go to a bowl game, I
Yeah.
ought to be able to get 10, 15, 20,000 people at least to
Yeah.
give me a couple $100 a year for the NIL program. We have a little over 400, shy of 500 season ticket holders that are sworn members. I'm hopeful that number increases as we move forward. So, that's we'll see.
Well,
It's really up to the Iowa fans.
and having an administration that's behind you is huge. I mean, that's
And they are. They are. I really think they want to help. Their hands are just tied to some level.
Yeah, because of the craziness of everything that's going on. Well, Brad, this was been fun. It's been enlightening. My favorite part is that you're the Hawk guy and that you're cool with coming and talking to a Cyclone, and we can have a
No
good
problem at all,
constructive.
man.
I want our state to do well, man. I mean
I do
that,
too.
and I've
I do too. And you know, people. It's interesting too. People have come up to me and they'll you know, some Iowa fans will talk some trash about the Iowa State Collective, and I know I'm going to catch grief just for saying what I'm about to say, but I mean, my heart goes out to Brent and what he's trying to do because I know how hard it is, and I wish him well. I know it's a tough job, and you know, I hope they're successful. I hope they're not successful against us on the field.
yeah. Oh, of course not. Yeah,
You
it's
know, I
thankless.
mean,
It
in fact,
really
I'll
is
go a step
thankless.
further. I hope we kick your ass like all up and down the field. But you know, or down the court, whatever we're
If you
talking about.
didn't say that, I would have a problem with it. I think it's
Okay,
a good.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, I just want to make sure. I didn't want to
yeah,
leave any ambiguity out
yeah.
there.
Understood.
But
Understood.
I do wish that him well, and I hope that you know, I hope that Iowa actually passes some of the same legislation that some of these other states have that have helped the NIL programs in their state prosper.
Well, thank you, and you can get a hold of me if you ever need anything, and I'll probably be hitting you up for
Likewise,
some of that golf next time I'm in Florida. I'll be bothering you.
come on down, man.
All right.
Come on down.
He
We've
is
got a few cyclones down here too.
awesome. Brad, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris.